Good morning. I'm Rosalie Schaefer, President of the League of Women Voters of Manatee County. And on behalf of the League, I welcome you to our hot topic today. Today, we will be talking about a problem that has always existed in schools, but has gotten worse in recent years due to social media, and that's bullying. And what is bullying? It's been defined as the mistreatment of an individual or group with a willful intent to cause harm. Repeated bullying can often cause low esteem, absenteeism, and falling grades. In some cases, it results in depression and even suicide. Our speakers today will discuss the issue and what is being done to protect the victims. We are very pleased to have with us today 3 experts in this field. Vanessa McAllister, she's with Centerstone Hospital Child Trauma Services, and Skip Wilhoit, the Safe Schools Coordinator for the Manatee School District, and Officer Alan Judy from the Manatee County Sheriff's Office. Is he here yet? Oh, okay. After their presentations, we will have questions from the audience and discussion. Okay, with no further ado, let us have our first speaker, Vanessa McAllister.
Good afternoon. How is everybody? It is afternoon, right? Noon? Okay. All right. So as Rosalie said, my name is Vanessa McAllister, and I am with Centerstone Child Trauma Services. We serve ages 0 to 17, and we focus on providing individual treatment and family treatment when it comes to a child experiencing trauma. And as we all know, trauma can be different based on the individual. It's all based on perception. And bullying is a significant type of trauma, and we do see a lot of that specifically in Manatee County amongst our children and youth that we serve. So what is bullying? As Rosalie said, it is a deliberate, antagonistic, so consistent negative action with the intent to cause physical, emotional, or psychological distress in a child or youth. It's also a form of aggression and harassment that prevents the target from enjoying a safe and stress-free environment. Now, this can be a one-time offense or a repeated action that an individual is placing on another individual. So this could be a one-time thing, or it could be an ongoing thing that's happening every single day. Okay? And there are numerous types of bullying, and we all know that social media is a significant type of bullying now, given that we are in an age of technology. All of our youth are on their cell phones and on Facebook and Instagram and all of that, right? So that is the biggest type of bullying that we're seeing. But we also have the other types, whether it be physical aggression, verbal aggression, or social aggression. Now, those all look differently. Physical can be hitting, kicking, punching, spitting on another individual. Verbal could be teasing, name-calling, taunting, or even threatening to harm in extreme circumstances. Social bullying can be spreading rumors about one, whether that be through verbal contact or even on social media. And then we have our cyberbullying, which is rumors as well, threats, even creating websites about other children that are negative and cause harm to that other individual. Now, who can be a target of bullying? Everyone can be a target of bullying. However, there are some statistics that have shown that there are certain variables that may cause an individual to be more prone to bullying. So a statistics that came straight from National Child Traumatic Stress Network stated that 39% is due to physical appearance. So when a child is going to school or when a child is engaging in other contact with another individual, whether that be a youth or another child, it's all based on how they look on the outside, which is discrimination, right? 33% was due to sexual orientation. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Sexual orientation as in, how do they come off? What gender are they attracted to? Are we talking about our LGBTQ community? Maybe they are associated with that, maybe they are not, all right? Most of the individuals' bullying was based on sexual nature, okay, so going back to the sexual orientation. And males are equally bullied. Do we all see that in the community? That males are equally bullied just as females are. There are some other environmental factors that can play part in who could be a target of bullying. A lot of it comes to parental supervision. So how much contact are our parents having with our children? How much are they involved with their children? Do they understand what they're engaging in out in the community? So whether that be lack of parental limitations, saying, well, yes, you can go to this individual's home, or maybe it's not a good idea that you engage in this type of activity. It's not healthy. So there's a lot of lack of limitation when it comes to our youth engaging in activities. There also might be a model for bullying. So a parent could be bullying their own child. So we all know our children are sponges, right? They learn by experience. So if this is being done in the home, or if they're experiencing it with someone that they're very close with, this is their model for the bullying behavior that they're going to pick up on. And also a lack of warmth and parental involvement, okay? So essentially it could be neglect, or it could just be a parent that maybe works a lot. So just a lack of warmth and inviting environment in the home. Now going back to trauma, trauma is the leading factor to a child being bullied or becoming the person that is bullying another. 41% of kids with at least 3 adverse childhood experiences demonstrate negative behaviors such as bullying. Traumatized children most often have difficulty developing protective factors. Now, what do I mean by protective factors? That's their social skills. That's their self-esteem, okay? So social skills such as self-esteem and positive engagement in other activities in the community help enhance their resiliency. So it helps them bounce back from those adverse experiences that they're having in the community. And also 27.6% of boys and 40.5% of girls were diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder based on experiencing this bullying. Now, what are some long-term and short-term effects that a child can experience when they are being bullied? Things such as despair, the inability to trust others, whether that be their family or their friends or just people on a day-to-day basis. They most oftentimes experience a lot of stress and anxiety. Now, this could be environmental, or this could be a constant day-to-day stress. So if they're being bullied in the school, they might have induced anxiety upon arriving to school, or it could even be in the home. They might have induced stress and anxiety in the home, depending on where the bullying is taking place. They often experience a lot of anger, frustration, loneliness, and isolation. So if you see a child withdrawing, it could be due to bullying. Again, it's hard for them to develop poor relational skills, so how do they develop healthy relationships? It's most oftentimes hard for them to develop healthy relationships due to the bullying. It can also lead to non-suicidal self-injury, which most of us know as cutting, but that can also be other forms as well, such as consistent pinching or causing harm to the body of the superficial layers, eating disorder, and suicidal and homicidal ideations. Now, this is long and short-term effects of bullying. Some other signs and symptoms very well associated with bullying could be rigid thinking, self-blame, so they're blaming themselves for being bullied, which most oftentimes we know is not their fault. Thoughts of harm or suicide, engaging in risky behavior, such as smoking, drinking, impulsivity, so taking risky actions and risky behaviors in the community. And other statistics of bullying, a child is bullied every 7 minutes. What do we think about that? nationally, every 7 minutes, a child is bullied. And 10 to 20% of these students are experiencing chronic bullying. So what do I mean when I say chronic? That's consistent. That's not just a single event. This is ongoing. This is something that they're experiencing in a day-to-day, in their day-to-day life. In the schools, the average episode of bullying is only 37 seconds. And although that does not seem like a long time, if we're talking about chronic bullying, if we add that up over time, how much in the school setting are they being bullied throughout their experiencing when they're going to school, trying to gain their education? During that time, the teacher only intervenes 1 out of every 25 episodes. Now remember, this is a national statistic. So out of 1 out of every 25 episodes, the teacher is intervening, which means that this child is feeling alone. If they're experiencing chronic bullying, who do they turn to for help? Who is the adult that is going back and helping them? Okay? 160,000 students report missing school. So as Rosalie stated, now this is interfering with their academic attendance. Excuse me. And 90% of these students were between the grades of 4th and 8th grade. And when we talk about adolescent development, we know that between 4th and 8th grade, children go through a lot of developmental changes, and a lot of those are on the exterior. So going back to the #1 cause of bullying is their physical appearance. And also 8.2 million students are bullied each year. 8.2 million students are bullied each year. Now we know that there's a lot of intervention and preventative measures that are being offered here in Manatee County in our schools to prohibit this and also prevent it. One of the programs that we offer at Centerstone is our Child Trauma Services, which is preventative and intervention in itself. So when a child is experiencing any of these symptoms that I went over, we could offer individual therapy or play therapy. And we oftentimes work with the family to incorporate the family unit as a whole to discuss the experiences that these children are having. So that could be preventative and intervention as well. And that's all I have. Any question? Are we doing questions at the end?
That'll be at the end.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you. I did provide handouts if anyone else would like handouts in the back. Thank you.
Oh, sure. I thought you wanted me up here, so whatever works for your schedule, Ms. Schaefer, I'm good with it. And Vanessa did a great job of setting the table, so I don't want to rehash necessarily a lot of the things that she covered. And when we talk about the definition, though, I'm really glad that she pointed out that bullying, it can be a one-time event or it can be a chronic issue that happens over and over with a repeated pattern of behavior. When we look back at the seminal research that was conducted in the 1970s by Dan Olveus, he's a Norwegian researcher, that was the first time that we even looked at bullying as a topic within schools, and that was the 1970s. And Olveus defined bullying as a repeated pattern of behavior over time. And because of that research, nearly every organization in America now adopts that repeated pattern. But the first time that somebody uses their advantage and power, whether they're bigger, whether they're stronger, whether they're older, whether they outnumber other kids 2 to 1, 3 to 1, or 4 to 1, or especially if they're more popular, the first time that a kid uses that power to harm another kid intentionally and on purpose, it's bullying, and we're going to deal with it as such within the school district of Manatee County. We do classify bullying differently if it is repeated over time versus if it's a one-time event. So we do draw lines based on that factor, but overall, we try to use that definition of any time that a student is harmed on purpose due to an advantage in power. So that's our definition of bullying. What we do about it in the school district dates back to probably the 2002-2003 school year. There was really no response in schools, as I mentioned, to Dan Olveus' research in the 1970s. It sat on shelves for basically 20 years in this country until, unfortunately, Columbine happened in 1999. And in response to Columbine, our federal government created the Federal Safe and Drug-Free Schools program. And it was through that program that our schools throughout this country first started to focus on the issue of bullying. And in 2004, 2005, we set up committees in the school district to study the phenomenon. We created the definition that I just dropped on you, with a one-time event also being possible to be called bullying. And we also set up our framework for bullying prevention and intervention within the school district as to how we would respond to the issue and try to get out into our schools to talk to kids to prevent this. So since 2004, 2005, I've been going out to our elementary schools, multiple elementary schools, dozens of them each year, and I speak to students. It started off as classroom presentations, and I'd travel from classroom to classroom, but that would generally take up 2 to 3 days. So we condensed it now, and we do grade-level presentations. And most of them are done at our elementary schools, but I do get out to some middle schools and talk about it as well. And what we try to do is define the behavior for kids. Because if there's one thing I've found out, not only do kids not know the difference between bullying and other forms of peer conflict, a lot of staff doesn't know the difference. A lot of parents don't know the difference. Adults don't know the difference between bullying and different forms of peer conflict. And again, those two elements have got to be that imbalance of power and that intent to cause harm, whereas other forms of peer conflict are going to be different. And it becomes important to delineate between the two, because that's going to dictate how we respond to the situation. So when we talk about what we did as a committee, we set up that entire framework for how we would respond. And we created a system where initially, back in 2006, I believe it was, we set up our very first online reporting system. Because it's known that about 10% of all bullying situations become aware to adults. Kids don't report it. They are afraid of reporting to adults because they don't think adults can help. They think that it'll make the bullying worse if it comes to light that they actually went to an adult to report it. They feel victimized and embarrassed and ashamed sometimes. They won't even go to their parents to talk about these most basic things that keep them safe because of embarrassment. So we created this online system that did replace the old traditional wooden bully boxes that we used to have in schools. Good idea, but they were seldom used. Again, people didn't want to be seen putting notes inside the bully box. Things that would go inside the bully box weren't exactly helpful. Sometimes they were downright gross, and administrators had to pick through them to get to the actual tips. So the online system was a tremendous help. And then earlier this year, Dr. Green released a new reporting system that also incorporates a mobile app. So our kids can access this on their cell phones, on their mobile devices, on their computers, and at any time, at any place where a student's being bullied, they can go ahead and that information goes right to me. And the system that we created in 2004 and 2005 is still in place, where every one of our district schools have at least one investigator that's trained to intervene with bullying situations. So any report that I get through our online reporting system, it'll go straight to me and then to our investigators, and they look into the situation immediately. And this happens, as I said, immediately in real time. We also have these people are taking reports from parents, from other students in the school. So these contacts that we have set up in each school filter all of the different reports that we might get for bullying. And when it comes to the presentations that I give to students in schools, we get them all together and we talk about exactly what bullying is, what it looks like, how to identify the different tenets of bullying. And as Vanessa said, it can be social, it can be emotional, it can be physical in nature. She said psychological as well, and we kind of grouped that with the emotional. But if students are ostracized based on rumors that are spread or different things that are said online through social media, that has a socialization effect on kids. It's harder to make friends, it's harder to keep friends. And when kids have rumors that are started about them within schools, they don't want to come to school. National estimates show that 175,000 students every single day stay home from school out of fear of being bullied. So that's the impact that the social type of bullying can have on kids, and it's profound. When we talk about the physical bullying, that's the pushing, the kicking, the shoving, the punching. Those are the things that are done to physically harm kids, but when we actually look at the harm that's done to them, it's not the physical as much as it is the psychological and the emotional harm. They live in fear. It's not that they were hurt when they were pushed into the wall, when they were shoved down to the ground. Yeah, it might hurt, but they live in fear, and that's what a bully's primary intent is to do. They want to instill fear, and they want negative behaviors from the students that they do target. So when we talk to kids, we want to make sure that we teach them how to combat this. Not only how to act when they see it happening to other students in the hallway. It's estimated that about at the high school level, around 20% of our students wind up being victims of bullying at some point. Now that's data that I'm throwing at you that goes back to the 2011-2012 school year when we used to survey all of our schools. And when we had that information, that's generally the rates that we saw. 18 to 20% of our high school students, roughly 23 to 25% of our middle school students, and then upwards to 40% of our elementary school students reported being victims of bullying at some point. And that'll be grades 3 through 5 that we surveyed. Now, one might think that as you get older, the bullying would become more prevalent, but that's not the case. When we talk about younger kids, we're talking about children that don't really have social boundaries or awareness of their social boundaries. A lot of name calling and teasing that takes place is going to happen more at the elementary school level. And then as kids morally develop and as they grow and as they age and become more aware of their social boundaries, it becomes less and less prevalent. However, it does become more and more severe. So the cases that we see in middle school, the cases that we might see in high school, they transcend the simple name calling and teasing that's so prevalent at the elementary school levels. We'll see higher concentrations of physical bullying as well. And when we get into the middle school and high school level, the consequences, they become more profound as well. I don't need to talk to you about the things that have transpired recently in this country as a direct result of bullying and students that have been ostracized, students that have been made to feel like they're not part of their school communities. This is an issue that goes back in time, and that's why we take it as seriously as we do. So we want to make sure that every student out there in this school district understands that they have a place that they can go, whether it's the adult in the school that we've identified to be the primary contact for bullying who investigates these acts, or whether it's simply to go online, open up your app, go online and go to the online reporting site that we have and let me know, and we'll let somebody know. So we've tried to make that very, very common knowledge for our students. We put posters up in our schools directing them to these websites so they all know what they can do. So I'd like to think that that effort has increased that national estimate of 10% of bullying cases that rise to the attention of an adult. I'd like to think that it's a little bit higher here in Manatee County as a result of our efforts. But we also teach kids how to respond directly before they need to report it to a caring adult. You know, we want them to be able to handle these situations on their own. And we talk about not feeding the bully. And I tell kids all the time, I want you to use your 3 C's. You got to be cool, you got to be calm, and you got to be confident. Do not feed the bully with your negative reactions. They want your fear, they want your sadness, and they want your anger. And if they think they can get it from you, they're going to keep coming back as long as you give it to them. So no matter how much it hurts, no matter how much it makes you angry, the most important thing that you can do is remain calm, take that deep breath, look them in the eye. And I tell kids, if you can't look them in the eye, look them right there in the forehead. Okay? It does not make a difference. And you establish that eye contact, and it lets them know that you're being serious. It lets them know you're not afraid. And that's the most important message that you can send. And then remain calm and tell them, have a nice day. We want our students to try to handle these things, not be aggressive in their response, not be placid in their response either. We don't want them, or passive in their response either. We want them to be assertive in their response. Stand up for yourselves, but more importantly, stand up for each other. Most situations of bullying happen in front of an audience. So when we tell our kids that they can make the biggest difference in their schools by creating these welcoming environments, by not bowing down to the bullies who seek to instill fear in the rest of our students in our schools, they're the ones that can make the biggest difference. And that's what we try to do in our school district, is create those welcoming environments. And again, I like to think that we've made a lot of headway, but our work is certainly not done. And then when we talk about students and what the response is, if that doesn't work, if being assertive and standing up, smiling and look them in the eye or the forehead doesn't stop the bullying, that's when we want them to report. We tell them to go to a caring adult, an adult that they know, an adult that they like, and an adult that they trust. And if they can't find within their school, they've got the online process that they can go ahead and report that to us with. So that's what we do within our school systems. We talk to our kids where the opportunities present themselves for curriculum, for instructional time. We get it into certain classes where we're able to do that. I don't want to steal any thunder from Deputy Judy, but now that we're bulking up our school resource officer ranks in the coming years, I'm hopeful that we'll have more instructional opportunities with law enforcement to be able to talk to our students about this within a formal curriculum. So at every chance that we get, we do talk to our kids about this. We also try to make resources available for parents, and we develop guides. We put information out on our website to let parents know what to look for with your child. The same thing with any adult. You know, the main thing is know your kid. You know, look for the change. And that could be indicative of a lot of different things. When it comes to bullying, you know, does your kid come home with torn clothes, tattered clothes, dirty clothes, missing items? Do they complain about not wanting to go to school in the morning, whereas before they didn't have a problem going to school? Do they go to the clinic at a certain time every day to avoid going to certain places within the school? There are signs out there. And look for your kid too. Does your child maybe have personal qualities about them that might make them a likely target for bullying? Talk to them. You know, if they're smaller than their average peers, if they're not as outgoing as their peers are, they might make a good target for bullies. So you've got to know your kid, and you've got to be able to look for those signs. And then we give, you know, a little bit of tips and guidance for parents on how to talk to their kids about this topic, because it's not easy. As we said before, kids feel victimized when they are the targets of a bully. And no child wants to become a victim in the eyes of their parents. So it's a very difficult topic. And one of the most important things that I ever convey to parents is, please do not tell your child to fight back, to hit back. Now, if there's one important thing that I can say to parents out there, remember that your child is being targeted because they have less power than the bully has. And when you put it in their minds that they have to fight back, that they have to hit back, not only are you subjecting them to possible school-based sanctions within the school, they might wind up being suspended after they've been a victim of bullying, and that's a tragedy. But at the same time, you're opening the door up for them to even suffer greater physical consequences because the kid that's picking on them 9 times out of 10 is a lot bigger than they are. And when a kid gets it in their head that my mom wants me to fight back and my dad wants me to hit back, well, that's what they're going to do. So the best advice that I've got is talk to your kid, watch your kid, and know your kid. And if there's a problem going on in the schools, contact your school. And we will work with you as partners to make sure that that bullying stops. And that's what we're there to do. So with parents, it's all about watching your kids. Same thing with the adults in our schools. Know your kids, watch your kids. And that same advice that I gave for the parents of potential victims also goes for the parents of potential bullies. Does your child, do they have aggressive behaviors towards siblings, towards kids in the neighborhood? Are they bigger physically, more aggressive than the other children? If so, you need to look at them and have these conversations with your child proactively. Make sure that they understand how to treat their peers. Make sure they understand how to lead the way and rise up to protect students that may not have the power to stand up for themselves. So those are the conversations that are really important that our staff has with kids and that parents have with their own children. And again, we try to facilitate that through classroom presentations, grade level presentations, and the information that we disseminate to parents. So I guess that'll probably do it for right now, what we do in our school district. But you got to know that it's one of the most passionate things that we could possibly do, and we will not stand for any child to be hurt while they are in any of our schools in Manatee County. And if we're going to take questions at the end, I look forward to any that you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, well, I mean, Skip and Vanessa, they pretty much hit it on it all. But when it comes down to the legal ramifications of bullying, Florida State Statute 1006-147 defines it. But there's certain degrees on what happens. Like you have cyber stalking, as far as cyber harassment. And then you got what happens like in the schools where you was talking about physical violence. You have the battery that occurs when they touch another person against their will, or assault. And in that case, assault, threatening to do violence to them. And then you got stalking at their house. If they come to the house, stalking them, wanting to fight and bully them at their home. In that case, that's when I get involved and I do an investigation to determine what crime has been committed. And if so, we file charges on those crimes. It's pretty much the gist of what I do. And I don't have as much as they did, but because they hit on everything that I probably would have talked about. So that's all I got.
But first, I'd like to ask, what do you all do when, the kids just won't stop? The bully just keeps it up, no matter how many times you talk to them. What happens at that point?
Well, Rosalie, that's exactly what we talked about when we speak to children about what they do to handle bullying when it happens to them or when it happens to somebody else. The first response is to step up for the individual, whether it's them or whether it's somebody else. And we try to tell them to do it with those 3 C's: be cool, be calm, and be confident. Smile, look them in the eye, let them know that you're not intimidated, let them know that you're not scared. But we want that to be the first response. And I always tell kids, now this is not scientific by any means, but I tell them it's like 95% effective, okay? Most of the time when you can do that, these kids are going to stop because they want the negative reaction. They feed off the negative reaction. So if you don't give it to them, you don't feed them, and they will not come back. But if you do feed them with your negative reaction, whether it's one of anger and you think you got to puff your chest up and get mad and fight back that way, well, they win. If you get frustrated, if you get all red-faced, if that vein on the side of your forehead starts thumping, they win. So we've got to make sure that if that doesn't work, that you don't have to keep trying to do it. We don't expect children to sit there all day long and try to be calm, cool, and confident and put on a brave face. If it doesn't work the first time and a kid continues to get bullied, we want them to go to the adult that they know, that they like, that they trust, and report bullying. And one thing that's very important that we delineate when we talk about reporting, because we do live in an era where in certain neighborhoods it's prevalent common knowledge that snitches get stitches, that snitches wind up in ditches, that you should not go to an adult because it's always viewed as tattling or snitching. So one of the most important things that what we do when we talk to kids is I tell them, what are you trying to do when you tattle, when you snitch, and when you tell? You guys could probably tell me that right now. What do you do? What are you trying to do when you tattle on somebody? Get them in trouble. That's what it's all about. And we don't teach our kids to get other people in trouble. No, what we want from them is to make sure that they report. You're trying to get kids out of trouble, whether it's you or somebody else. So it's really the opposite of what we're doing here. So I make sure that our children know that going to a trusted adult when somebody's in trouble is the exact opposite of snitching or tattling. So that's what we try to do to get them to report. We've put the online and now the social media app that we have to help try to get more kids to report these things when they see it. So social media is not the complete devil when it comes to bullying. Sometimes in this particular case, it can be a tool to help resolve issues as they come to light. So I hope that addressed the question and not a whole lot more.
My name is Jo Williams, and I just wonder, do you think the problem has gotten worse through the years? Do you think there's more bullying now than, say, 10 years ago?
I don't have statistics to go off of, but bullying is not a new thing, and we all know that. However, the fact that we do live in an age of technology where things are more easily accessible, where things can be created to be bigger than what they are. So if we have an individual that's being bullied in the school, well, we're going to hear about it all on social media. They might even go a little bit further and put all this in a group text and get others involved in the bullying. So it's not necessarily a new thing. I think that we are becoming more aware of it. Going back to what Skip was stating is, the statistics that we saw back in the 70s. Okay, we knew it was there, but what did we do about it? I mean, this is something that we can respond to more easily. We have more resources available. We have more knowledge about it. We have more research on it, and we have a better response to it. So the term, it does take a village, it does take a village. We all have to work together from Skip's perspective and then from Deputy Judy's, and then my perspective. The three of us are good not only intervention but also preventative measures when it comes to this topic, and our community is all working together to ensure that we are creating awareness and that we're doing something about it collectively. I hope that answers your question.
Hi, I'm Kristen Olson. I'm new to Florida. I work for Just for Girls. My question is kind of a two-part for Skip and Deputy Judy. I was a teacher in California with middle school kids. Is there a reason why you're focusing mostly on the elementary? I see, and I get trying to start them young, but the middle school issues that I saw with Snapchat in particular was just off the charts what some of these kids were doing. So my second part of the question is kind of for Deputy Judy. What can administration do as far as the actual social media? Can they confiscate phones? Can they say at this school, if we find a kid who is using Snapchat, you're in trouble? Because Snapchat, I don't know if you know much about it, but it's there and then it's gone. And so it's not like Facebook or it's not like Instagram where you can kind of track it as easily. And so social media is getting smart with things like that. And so are we keeping up with the times with combating these types of issues? Because if there's no way to track what these kids are doing, how do we discipline or instill consequences?
Screenshots. So when I go into...
But do they last long enough?
Well, we want kids to know, and then that's what we tell them immediately, tell parents the same thing. When you get something, and especially with Instagram, with especially Snapchat, they disappear, as you said. So you have a finite window, 8 seconds, or however long it might be, to capture that screen image. So we do teach kids immediately, if you get something on social media, especially if you're on that app and you know you're on that app, make sure you take that screenshot. So I ask kids right now, how many of you guys know how to take a screenshot on your phone? Boom, all hands go up. So we make sure that they do understand that. And why we focus on the elementary schools is simply a matter of opportunity. In this day and age of academic accountability, as a former teacher, I'm sure you know in our middle schools and our high schools, it becomes increasingly more difficult to get in front of students for very long, to have these conversations. Our schools do a great job of squeezing this in where they're able to squeeze it in, but we do have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to our elementary schools, and we've built up such a great rapport with our elementary schools over the years that they continue to ask us back every single year to have these conversations with their students. And ideally, if you have these conversations with every kid when they're a young kid, you'd like to think over and over after 3 years of talking to them that they carry that knowledge with them into middle schools. But invariably, that's not going to be effective for every child. We do get into middle schools and have these conversations as well. We have different curricula that's in front of our students that does speak to this at the middle and high school level. But the more we could get an audience with them, the better it could be. And I'll let Deputy Judy handle that second part of the question. I'm glad you want him to do it.
When it comes down to the cell phone things, there's criminal and non-criminal side of it. And for the school, the principals have more leeway to search people's book bags than I do, seizing phones. When it comes to bullying, if there's a threat made over the phone, an assault, so to say, and I'm investigating a crime, I can physically seize that phone until I can write up a search warrant to go into the phone unless I get permission from the parents or the student to go into that phone to retrieve that. As far as Snapchat goes, I know that it goes out quick. As far as, you know, they'll do the 1 second timer, but if it's posted on their thread where it's good for 24 hours, you can go back. But like Skip said, the best thing to do is what I tell kids is when something like that happens, screenshot it, because that way it's in your phone and then we can see it. But as far as going to Snapchat, we'd have to do subpoenas and warrants and whatnot. But again, when it comes to the criminal side of it, yes, I can seize their phone, and then at which time, you know, if I don't get consent through the parents or the student to go in the phone, then I'll just have to write a search warrant for it, then I can get into it. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay.
My name is Tom Scalota. I'm a retired psychologist, and over 20 years ago, I had a 14-year-old who blew his head off as a result of this. I went to the funeral, and the students from the school came, and they all sort of expressed their sadness at his loss, but nobody stood up to him or stood up for him while he was in school. I want to know what you're doing to the bullies or for the bullies, because they're generally the most insecure and feeling inadequate individuals in the school. And I think it's a great way to identify those that are going to become our future criminals and drug addicts. So I'd like to know what you're doing for and about the bullies themselves.
There was one study that showed 60% of students who have been identified as a bully at the middle school level going into 6th grade, 60% go on to have at least one criminal conviction by age 24. So there's an absolute amount of research behind that statement that you made. They are our future criminals. We've always considered it pre-criminal behavior, and when we first started our investigators that we assembled at every one of our schools, largely they were school resource officers because we felt it was pre-criminal in nature and we wanted to get them an audience in front of law enforcement as early as we possibly could. When we talk about bullies, it's pretty much a misconception that they're the most insecure students. They actually are overly confident. They have a bloated sense of self-esteem. They think they are better than the kids that they pick on. So they have that mindset that you're worse than I am, you're nothing, I'm going to be able to do whatever I want to you. So what do we do with them? We consequence them from a school perspective. It's been shown that you do not want to involve bullies in any type of group intervention activity where you sit them all down at once, they feed off of each other. And it can be a very negative environment to try to curtail that behavior. Early on, we try to get them involved in conflict resolution. We do try to get them one-on-one counseling. We try to help them as much as we possibly can through guidance counselors, school social workers, and school psychologists. But as I think probably a lot of you in this room know, those resources are spread thin throughout a school district. We are looking to do a better job with that. The $1 million increase is hopefully going to speak to that as well. I don't know. But we are talking about mental health now more in the educational landscape in Florida than we ever have before. So I'm hoping that that will change because connection with a trained mental health provider, counselor, that will be the best way to move forward if you have a persistent problem with a student. From a school's perspective, we're going to consequence them, and we're going to put down the law that you're not going to do any of this anymore once we catch them. And we have a progressive system of discipline within our schools that if you keep doing it, you're eventually going to be removed from that school, from that environment. But we have a whole series of consequences and interventions that will take place prior to that point. So we try to stop it many, many points along the way through intervention and through consequences. Best I got.
So I'd like to address this going back to the ACE studies. Can I have a show of hands who's familiar with the ACE studies, ACE? It stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So what the ACE studies show is that each time an individual experiences a traumatic event, this often, majority of the time, causes other health issues or other issues later on in their life. So most oftentimes what we're seeing is the bully that's placing this harm onto another individual has experienced at least 3 or more adverse childhood experiences in their past. So what can happen is within the schools, they can make a referral to places like Centerstone, and we can work with that bully itself. If we know that if we know the victim of the if we know the victim that is being bullied, we could also use a referral from the school systems to get that individual into therapy as well to discuss what it is that they have experienced that is being seen as trauma, because we know that trauma affects a child in more ways than one. And going back to being insecure, it is. They're insecure. They have gone through something and this is why we're seeing this behavior, whether they were bullied themselves or whether they've experienced another horrific event in their life. This is the behavior that is the aftermath of what it is that they have gone through. So I hope that helps answer it from a different perspective.
Yes, my name is China Smith, a.k.a. the People's Champ. And I just want to thank them. I'm very grateful to be here. I'm a professional boxer, a former boxer. And like some of you guys were saying, most of the time what happens is the kids that get picked on, they don't have the self-confidence. So when I bring up boxing, people get afraid because, you know, we're a fighter. But what the boxing helps, not that it's going to solve the problem, it helps, like you were saying, it builds the confidence up. When you have the confidence, the self-confidence within yourself, you're able to walk away, try to avoid problems, knowing that you can protect yourself. And so I would just say it out loud. And then even the bullies, when they come to the gym and it's under a regulated facility, they not all the time, but a lot of time they see you know, working together is a lot better than picking on somebody, because a lot of time when you really do some deep, like you said, research, you see most of the time the kids that are bullying people because they have missed issues, they've been abused themselves, or they're trying to fit in, or they're going through certain problems. And I just know that the boxing over the years, like I said, I've been able to, with my team, been able to help a lot of kids that's been picked on, to build their confidence up, or the kids that have been bullying, knowing that I want to take a different route. I don't want to. I decide now because they see they're not the toughest kid in the gym. They see that there are other people that are tougher than them, but because you have the ability to fight, you choose not to. And I'm not. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying fight, but knowing that you have the confidence. Me being a former champion, I have the confidence, but I have the confidence enough to know that he's talking about me. But what he's saying has nothing to do with me, and I can walk away from it, and then I go on about my business. And so that's what I'm here. Like I said, I'm China Smith. I'm here to help provide service for the kids. I love the kids. Kids make up 25% of the population, but they're 100% of our future. So it's time to come together. Teamwork makes the dream work. Thank you.
So going back to protective factors, you know, you're saying you don't want to take it from an aggressive standpoint, but you're right. What you are doing in the community is seen as a protective factor. So you're increasing confidence, you're increasing their self-esteem. So when I go out and I do trainings with the kids, with the youth in the school, I tell them, that's your bubble. Your bubble is your shield. And things like going to boxing and learning how to fight, okay, well, you might not use that fighting. You can take a step back and say, I can take you, you know, I can do all these things to you, but what you're saying is incorrect. It helps them make that shield, that bubble, more enhanced, so it increases their resiliency, which is a significant protective factor.
Right. So, like, I worked at the sheriff's department. I was in the corrections office for a little bit of time because I thought it was a cool job to take on. And I say this story for a fact. I was in there what is called H&S, high mass security. So that means these guys get convicted, they're looking at 10, 20 years to life. But because I am a fighter, because of I've been training, I felt confidence even with amongst all these guys. And like I said, building that confidence up in the individual so they have the belief that they can achieve and be whatever they want, regardless of what he or she is saying to them. Don't allow negativity to affect your life. And that's all I do. Try to.
Yeah, absolutely.
My name's Connie Russell. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in Florida since 1980 and worked at Manatee Glens. I'm in private practice now. I'm wondering if anybody here remembers the challenge program that was in the high schools. And I've been here so long and practiced so long, I can't remember when it was. But I would guess it was somewhere about 10 years ago. And do you remember it?
Challenge Day.
Challenge Day, yes. Yeah, so I had a friend, colleague, who was involved in that. She was very enthusiastic about it. I can't say I know a whole lot about it, but she felt like it was very positive. And so I'm kind of wondering what happened to the challenge program. And I can tell you what I know about it, just based on what she told me. But she was trying to get all of us to get involved, other therapists and that sort of thing. Do you have a question? Well, my question is, does anyone remember that program and what happened to it? So I thought I would explain what I knew about it, but if you know it, you can explain it.
Well, yes, Challenge Day was brought by an organization based out of California. And they were in several of our schools approximately a decade ago. That was about right. And the concept of it was they would put all the students from a school, not all the students, but the majority of the students wound up coming, into a room, into a building, lock the doors for the entire day. And they would have a series of questions. They would ask students to cross a line if this represented who they were as a person. The problem with Challenge Day, now it did have a lot of supporters, and I'll give you that. It could be very cathartic, it could be very beneficial for a lot of students to talk about these issues, and it could be empowering for other students to try to make a difference within their schools. But at the same time, it also outed a lot of students' personal information about themselves. It could be a source of embarrassment for a lot of these students, and there was really very few psychological supports available for these students who said these statements about themselves, whether, and I don't want to get into too personal of things that students might have said about themselves, how they may have been victimized in the past, things that may have happened to them, but at the end of the day, the doors are open, everybody goes back into school, and now students are talking about each other and the things that had happened to them. So it could offer a source of victimization for some of these students who outed themselves in these environments. There's benefits to it, there's detriments to it. And I think that if a school were able to employ a nice cadre of, again, mental health professionals to deal with some of the fallout from that, it might serve a better purpose. But I think the negative side of it probably outweighed the benefits to it. And I have not seen it in several of our schools, any of our schools, to be honest with you, in several years, despite the fact that I do know there are some supporters of the program within our district.
So it's not being offered anymore. I mean,
No,
I know
ma'am.
I haven't heard anything about it.
No,
in
ma'am, and
years.
I'm not exactly sure where the funding came from previously to support that, but I can tell you that it was not school district funding. Schools may have raised the funds on their own through other means, but it was not a district-supported initiative to my knowledge. So,
I think what I understood was what was positive about it was it actually put the bullies and the bullied, let's call them that, together to understand each other.
and you don't want to do that. That's one of the worst things that any school could ever do is put a bully and a victim in the same room at the same time. That has the effect of re-victimizing a kid when they have to rehash all the different ways that they were tormented and tortured and abused by that bully. So we make sure that the staff that we have in our schools who investigate bullying are under the direct orders, do not bring these children into the room at the same time to try to hash out what took place. You are re-victimizing a kid at those times. If you suspect it's bullying, do it separately and make sure you don't ask those questions at the same time.
Good afternoon. I'm Umwezi Dake. I'm with Tempo News, and I have a mentoring program called Finding Our Greatness. My question is for Skip. My question is that I think our teachers in Manatee County, I wish we could pay them more. They do a tremendous amount. My question is, what programs, or do you have programs in place to mentor teachers or to guide them so that, I can remember a third grade teacher telling me, you're so left-handed, you're never going to get it, and those slips of the tongue. But a child who's already being bullied can feel like that with teachers. And unfortunately, there are, we're human, teachers are human. So do you have a program in place for teachers to help them watch what they say or learn how to speak to students who are bullied, and or all students?
Well, by the way, your opportunity to help make sure that our teachers are better paid is coming up next week. So if I can get that little plug in there, allow me to do that. As someone who was born and raised and going to die right here in Manatee County, I take a particular interest in how our teachers are treated, and I could not agree with you more. Overworked and underpaid. We do present training opportunities for our teachers. I'd like to see these things done more in college preparation programs for teachers. Unfortunately, right now, it's not part of most universities' teacher preparation programs. But we do offer trainings geared towards dealing with students who have certain behavioral issues. There's not a lot that is specific to bullying within the trainings that we do have, but we have a wide platform of online trainings that teachers can take on their own. We also have new teacher orientations where we try to give a little bit, we don't have much time with them, but we try to give them a little bit of information in regards to classroom management and how to deal with specific behavioral issues that they might see in their classroom. It's an area of focus that we probably could spend more money and resources on, but again, when we get down to money and resources, those are things that school districts are usually quite short on. But there's room for improvement, but we do what we can do right now to address that issue with our new teachers and existing teachers in our district.
I'm Jill Hirschfield. I am not a professional teacher, but when I retired, I thought it might be rewarding and maybe fun to substitute teach when I moved back to Bradenton. So I chose middle school because I like that age. They're more interesting, and I don't have patience for the little ones. But what I found out, though, even though I concentrated on computer science and math, the children control the schools now, not the teachers and the parents. Many of them have left everything to the teachers, which is not new. I also found from each middle school I went to, depending on how the teachers reacted to the principal, the leadership that came from the top down, and how strict they were. Why do we let kids carry their cell phones all day? Why do we have to take them away from them and tell them it's time to learn? What does timeout do? It allows them quiet time? Sure. Does it do anything to solve the problem? No. I think we need to take a look at how can we take control, get back to teaching, not disciplining. And I'm not saying a substitute teacher, you're dog meat, but looking around, and many times I would visit other classes, and the kids love computer science. That's one of the easiest ones to teach. But you look around, and the kids are taking care of it. You take a phone away, the parents are mad at you because they have to come in and get it. Many schools, especially in the Northeast, are having the kids deposit their phones at the beginning of the day. Homeroom concept, again. You leave you have announcements, you pledge allegiance to the flag, you leave your cell phones. You have, at the end of the day, you go back to that room, you get your cell phones. You can't use lockers anymore, so everyone has to carry all of that around. Why can kids sit there and wear their backpacks? Why don't they put them down during the class? I think we need to get control of our students, not let them continue to have control of us.
Well, I would disagree that students are in control of our schools. Now, today's society represents a lot more challenges than what we probably had all growing up, and there was no such thing as a cell phone. We've been waging that battle for a decade, and at first the response was exactly that: no, 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 don't bring these into school. Well, now you see kids as young as first grade all have cell phones. We are battling a rising tide. society has changed. This becomes their connection to the outside world. To take away cell phones often escalates situations into more of a problem for classrooms and the disruption to a classroom. You're talking to a guy who probably embraces the philosophy of, hey, let's bring these things in. Kids are going to have them. How do we turn them to our advantage and turn them into tools where we can learn? We now have a computer for almost every child that's in the palm of their hand. So instead of spending millions upon millions of dollars on technology, which we still need to do on some level, let's embrace the cell phones that are already in our rooms that children have. We just have to make sure that they use them at appropriate times for appropriate reasons. And it is a challenge. But I don't think that challenge is going to go away. And I think the more you try to ban them, the more you're going to find out that the resistance is just too strong. You're going to take situations where you have a possession of a cell phone into you're not taking my cell phone, and now they're cursing the teacher out, and it all breaks loose. So now you have problems all over the place. It's a challenge that every school district in this country is facing right now. It's a challenge that did not exist 10 years ago. It's one that's getting worse and worse is all I can tell you in that regards. But I am 100% confident that the school district of Manatee County Student Code of Conduct stands large in every one of our schools. And in students who do display disruptive behaviors or do target other students with their own behaviors, they are dealt with appropriately. And we do not mess around when it comes to the safety and to the discipline of our schools. So I would disagree about the kids are in control, but I understand the perception and where it does stem from. And anytime you'd like to have a conversation, we can have that one.
One last question.
Hi, I'm Mary Lynn Parker. My question is to all of you. Probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, one of the biggest issues that I found at the point when I was I'm trying to think what my title was, but I took all of the complaint calls is basically what I did. Attempted not to have them reach farther than me and be solved at the schools, but when it came to a parent complaining that their child was bullied, the biggest pushback I would get from the school administration at that time, and I'm hoping this has been resolved by your programs, is, well, boys will be boys, kids will be kids. And I want you to tell me that that pushback is gone and that people are recognizing and what you're trying to do is the thing we need to do. Or is there still that pushback?
Well, when you say, by the way, 1994, as I began my career at Manatee High School, you were my assistant principal over there. I'm not sure if you remember those times with me in the building. Herb Shappett, both of you guys, those were good times, and it has changed. You're going to hear that. I heard that from a principal maybe a decade ago. It was the last time I heard it, that boys will be boys. And I think we all know, we all see the news, we all understand the ramifications and the consequences when bullying goes unmitigated. It's as serious gets. And from my perspective, Mary Lynn, I want to make sure that there's not a single student in our hallways that feel alone, that feel abandoned, that feel that there's nowhere to go. And anytime that I get a phone call from a parent, they know by the end of our conversation that there's a passionate human being on the other end of this that will take care of business. What I try to do is make sure that the school principal is connected with that parent in meaningful conversation, and as a team that they're able to resolve that situation. But at no point are we ever going to excuse such behavior as boys will be boys or girls will be girls. That might be a point that can be made off to the side, but there's a lot more conversation that needs to take place other than that, and no parent, no student will ever walk away from a conversation with me having that thought in their head. That much I can promise you.
My name is Cheryl. I'm a former educator in New York State. And I just wondered what, if anything, is being done in Manatee County as far as intentional approaches to character education, character development, leadership development, to kind of be an anecdote or a way to channel these energies into a positive kind of direction.
Actually, Rosalie, I'm so glad that you allowed one more question because that speaks to my heart. We had to abandon our character education efforts that we started in the late aughts, probably 2008. Again, resources due to the financial crisis that swept this country at the time, due to increasing academic mandates put down by Tallahassee, it was difficult to entail or to do. But we this year have started to bring back our character education program. My director has ordered me to dust it off, put the mothballs off it, and we are unrolling. It's on our website right now. We are assisting schools with all the resources they need to have the character trait of the month. give them videos, give them quotes that they could put up on their marquees, provide them with lessons that they can have in the classrooms. We're doing as much as we can, but this is the first year where we're rolling character education back out. I believe it needs to be the center stone of what we do in education. The most important thing that we teach our kids is not English, math, social studies, or science. Now, mind you, this is my opinion, okay? Not one that's shared by Tallahassee or any other government. The most important thing that we can teach our kids and leave our kids with by the time they're done and they graduate our program is to be good citizens, to be able to live out their hopes and dreams and fulfill their own unique potentials as human beings. That's what education is all about. That's what public education is all about. And it's my hope that our step back into character education this year is step one into getting back to a holistic education that balances the social, emotional with the academic. So I'm praying, but we are squeezing it in when we can squeeze it in. And there's a lot of folks within the school district of Manatee County that feel the exact same way as you do and as I do. So I'm hopeful that we'll win the day eventually. So thanks so much for that one last question. I really deeply appreciate it.
So that was a great way to end this program. Thank you so much for all that you shared with us today. I think we learned a lot more about bullying than we ever thought we could learn. And we want to thank you. And it will be shown again, this program, on TV. METV is taping it. So if you know anybody who missed it and say, oh, I wish I had been there, tell them to go on to metvweb.com and they can click on their YouTube link and the entire program will come up. They will also show it on their TV station. So if you go into their website, you'll see their schedule of programming. And also, we want to remind you to vote in the school special election on March 20th. It's really important. No matter which way you're going to vote, it's important for everyone to participate. Our next educational program will actually be part of our annual meeting next month, and everyone is invited to attend. It will be held on Saturday, April 14th at the Pier 22 restaurant in one of the meeting rooms on the second floor for a luncheon and a talk. And we're very excited about our guest speaker for that, Dr. Carol Probstfeld from the State College of Florida, Manatee, Sarasota. And her talk will focus on something we mentioned earlier, the importance of the liberal arts in a STEM society. What do they add to someone's life, their growth, their occupation? And you can go onto our website and find more information about that, lwvmanatee.org. And we also want to thank the Bradenton Women's Club for the use of their hall. We are so pleased they were able to restore it after what happened during the hurricane. And we encourage you to join our league, and we have forms for that on our table. Thank you again so much for coming today.